Screen Blur.
Hello and welcome to Screen Slurps, the movie review podcast where we discuss the good, the bad, and the savage in the world of cinema. I'm Adam Meisner.
I'm Laura Herlocker.
And you better pick that up because it's the telephone.
What's your favorite scary movie?
It's the phone's still ringing. Help.
Help me.
Um,
I was quoting a different movie and not the one we are reviewing this
I'm
week,
trying to get into the movie that we're actually
know,
about to talk about.
I'm sorry, but it's Scream. It's like everyone knows Scream. That's what he does when he calls Drew Barrymore in the beginning.
Well, maybe not everyone does know
Come on,
Scream.
Adam, I'm
That's what
trying
we
to
listen to
pull
a
in
show
the
like this
references.
for, huh?
You reviewed it on this podcast. So
Oh, that's true.
you forgot.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't watched the film Scream yet, you better go back in time and listen to us talk about it. But if you have seen Scream, well then, watch it again. If not, listen to this episode as we talk about the brand new spanking horror film, The Black Phone.
Spanking.
Yeah, you heard me correctly. The Black Phone. And the phone may not spank you, but it will do some other
breathes.
things. It does. It does breathe.
And it rings even though it's not connected to anything.
That's also true. Isn't that something to be scared about if you hear your phone go off? And
Thank God we don't have home phones anymore because I think I would be terrorized
I was
every
just about
time
to
it
say
calls.
that.
Right,
I was
mean,
talking about a phone ringing even though it's not connected, and then I realized, oh wait,
That's a
nobody
cell phone.
has landlines anymore.
Cell phones are not connected.
Cell phones
But
aren't
honestly,
connected to anything.
who has their ringers on anymore? I feel like everyone our age has their phones on silent, like vibrating, so you never really hear a ring.
Right? I was going to say when you're at work and you have your cell phone next to you, don't you keep it on silent? But then again, a lot of people just don't even worry about their ringtones at all, or if they have the ringer on.
Do you still leave yours on?
With the ringtone
I
on?
only asked because when I text you, then your coworkers would constantly be hearing "Ootini."
Yeah, I actually do leave that on sometimes at
I
work.
would be so annoyed if I was your coworker.
Usually when I leave the ringtone on and I hear it go off, I very quickly put it on silent and then work the rest of the day just because I hear the noise of a Jawa from Star Wars for anytime Laura texts me at work.
Your poor coworkers.
It's always very quiet at work, or I'll just hear my coworkers talking to a client on their phone, doing their job, and then all of a sudden I just hear, Houdini! So...
Oh, good times. Good times.
It's fun. It definitely makes my mornings go very nicely. I'll be sitting there drinking a cup of coffee, typing on the computer, doing my job, and then Houdini! It's great.
Maybe we'll review Star Wars sometime.
Which one, though?
That's the question. There's lots of them.
But anyways, before we get into the details of the Black Phone
Not Scream.
and the horrific entity of the Black Phone, which is, dare I say, Ethan Hawke. He's a scary man in this movie. In a great way, I will say. We'll get into the details of all of that, but first we are going to talk about our side slurps of the week. That's right, our side slurps. If you don't know what those may be, well, neither do we, but we're going to tell you all about them. It's the things we've been doing other than watching The Black Phone. Things like watching other TV shows, other movies, maybe even playing a piece of music for the past week, maybe even watching the stars at night to help us fall asleep. I mean, watching the stars and falling asleep while watching them. You never know.
What are you saying?
You heard exactly what I said. Some people do that. Some people look up at the sky at night and they're like, wow, this is so peaceful and relaxing.
No, it's true. I would love to go on a vacation where you and I would be glamping, essentially, like in a yurt, and we could just stare up at the stars.
I mean, that's how a lot of people get into astronomy. They just look up at the sky and they're thinking, wow, isn't that so beautiful?
Let's find a
I just want
yurt.
to study it. Let's have a yurt?
Let's find a yurt.
Oh, I thought you said let's have a yurt.
Sounds like a party.
Laura, what have you been up to this past week?
Dreaming about yurts.
I guess.
Obviously. No, listen up, slurpers. My little slurpers here. It is August. And do you
Is
know
that
what
like My
that
Little
means?
Pony?
Be
Like
quiet.
My Little Slurpers?
They're my little slurpers. My little slurpers.
Okay, continue.
As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, it is August, which means it is officially a spooky season. Is it still summer and 95 degrees outside? Absolutely. Will that stop me from enjoying my spooky, witchy autumn vibes? Absolutely not. So, spooky season has begun. Hence why we're reviewing a horror film this week.
I mean, you can tell from the discounted autumn supplies you can get from Dollar General.
Let me
Target.
tell you, it's the best time of the year. I am a spooky bitch, and I'm very excited about fall.
Sounds like a T-shirt you need to invest in.
I think there are lots of things you could buy on Etsy that say spooky bitch. If not, I'll draw one. So to start things off, I made Adam rewatch Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, the extended version, which is the only version that anyone should be allowed to watch.
It's 4 hours long, so you know it's worth your watch.
But that really kicks off like the fall vibes. It makes me so happy. We're rewatching in preparation for the new Amazon Prime series that's coming out, I think, in September, so very soon. The new series on Amazon Prime is going to be, it's set like thousands of years before the Fellowship of the Ring and that trilogy. And it's set during the second age of Middle Earth, where we see like the rise of Sauron and the creation of the rings. You know, I think it's like 3 dwarves, 9 men, 7 elves, however many they are that have the rings. We kind of get to see all of that. So I'm very excited about that series. So in preparation, we are rewatching. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to make Adam rewatch the Hobbit trilogy or not. I don't really like that trilogy. So Adam's never seen it though. So I think maybe you need to just watch it so you just kind of know what's going on. Other than that, we tried to watch 50 Shades Freed and we got most of the way through and Adam was just like, this is a horrible, horrible movie, and we stopped.
I've even watched the other 50 Shades movies just because, just to add them to the palette of movies I've seen.
The first
just
two
to give
are
them a try.
bad.
And also just because I love the music of The Weeknd.
Yeah.
And that's reason enough just to watch 50
The
Shades.
last movie's so bad, though.
It was very bad.
Which makes me mad because the books are actually way better. Like, I was kind of telling you, especially in the third book, I feel like it focuses a lot on Christian and kind of understanding why he is the way he is, like what in his childhood impacted him and made him the way he is. I'm not saying it's a great book. I'm not saying it's fantastic, but it's enjoyable and it is much better than the movie. So we just kind of stopped. I don't think I'll make Adam finish that. So move on from there. I'm still watching Ted Lasso. Again, I think that's probably the greatest TV series on television today. Almost done. Almost caught up. I did finally finish a book this week. I have been in a weird reading rut for the past 2 months, and I've barely read anything. But I finished Lessons in Chemistry today by Bonnie Garmus. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars. Probably one of the better books that I've read this year. It's set in the 50s, and it's about this woman who is a chemist. And obviously in the 50s, women weren't allowed to do anything. So there's a lot of sexual discrimination and a lot that she has to deal with being a chemist in that world. And as part of the things that she's dealing with, she loses her job and she becomes a afternoon TV show cook. She has a cooking show, but she has the cooking show, but she's still a chemist. It's really good. I don't know how to explain it, but it was a great book.
I think cooking is a chemistry of itself.
Well, that's exactly her point, right? She's cooking is chemistry. You're heating things up, you're combining things, you're the way things taste, you're adding a bitter and a sweet and an acid, it's all chemistry. Cooking is chemistry. And the idea is that life is chemistry even, talking about the attractions between people, that everything has to do with chemistry. And I'm not a sciencey person, but I found this book to be just so engrossing. There's something about it. I think I was more pulled to it for the feminist aspect of it, but even the chemistry bit is really, really interesting. It doesn't go too heavy into it. It's just enough where you're oh, okay, I get what they're going for.
For sure.
Really great book. It's on a lot of book club lists this year. I think like Reese Witherspoon, a lot of people. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets picked up to be like a movie or something, which I think would be really great. But that's my rant. I think I'll stop there. I'll let you go, Adam. What have you been slurping this past week?
Well, Laura, I've been having a great time watching you attempt to play the brand new video game Stray, because for those of you who are well aware, Laura just loves cats. She loves the cats that we have, and she just loves looking at pictures of cats, and she loves thinking about cats.
Yeah, I'm a cat woman.
Anything that has to do with the feline animal, she just can't get enough of it. So the fact that there's a video game where you yourself are playing as a stray cat immediately sucked her into it, and I just love, playing the game myself and watching Laura attempt to play the game.
I'm not good at games, so watching me attempt is a very good word to use there.
Well, when you're playing an emotionally story-driven game as a cat, you're definitely having a hard time, I can tell. And especially when the intro of the game is you and a family of cats, and then you are separated from the family.
It was sad.
It is very sad.
The poor little kitty.
Yeah, it was sad. But you did get a trophy for meowing 100 times.
Yeah. I can't get past the first easy thing, though. That's what we're saying with me attempting games. I'm not good at them. So...
It was very funny, but the game Stray was developed by the video game company Blue 12 Studio and published by, I think no pun intended on this one, but Annapurna Interactive.
That's a great name.
I know, for a cat game?
Yeah,
Annapurna,
I'm sure they did that on purpose, obviously.
It's pretty funny. So... You're playing as a stray cat who falls into a walled city populated by robots, machines, and viruses, and sets out to return to the surface with the help of a drone companion called B12.
Isn't that a vitamin?
B12?
Yeah, that you're, like vitamin D. There's no one like B12. I'm pretty sure it's a vitamin.
It would be funny if it was a vitamin that's helping you, but it is a drone companion called B12. And I mean, the whole premise of the game just sounds hysterical. It sounds like it's worth playing.
I don't think
just from reading.
It seems depressing so far.
I mean,
in a good way.
From first read, I'm thinking like this sounds pretty funny that you're playing as a cat. That's my first thought. But of course, at the same time, I get what you're saying, and yes, it is depressing that you're a cat that's separated from its family, and there's all of these very bad things: robots, machines, viruses, things like that. Yes, that is incredibly depressing. I get that. But I will say also, is it not funny that you're playing a game as a cat? Is that not got some humor to it? That's my thought.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
It's fun.
So I leave it at that on that thought. But in other news, Laura and I have both suckered ourselves into watching the brand new season of the Netflix series Blown Away.
Awesome.
We had loved watching the first 2 seasons of Blown Away, and now the new season had just come out. We have now watched all of the new season.
Mm-hmm.
We have plowed through all of the episodes. I'm not going to spoil who wins or loses the new season, but if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. It is a great show to watch, and it is just crazy to see professional glass blowers do what they do and make glass
I just can't imagine the things that they make just by, by molten glass and blowing. How they're able to, like, create these sculptures with things.
And they make it in just matters of hours. They get about 4 or 5 hours to make some professional looking artistic piece that looks so good with multiple colors of glass. They'll do it by like extended cane style.
We got all this
glass.
Terminology now.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
But even, I will say too, I feel like the contestants as a whole are like such at a higher caliber this season. Like I feel like everyone, not that the people in earlier seasons weren't good, but just everyone in this season was so good. I would have had such a hard time being a judge and having to eliminate people.
Yeah. You just had to be so good to remain on the show like anyone does in shows like that. You have to be crazy good to be on that show. And even if you don't stay on the show, you would just leave knowing that you're still incredibly good at what you do.
I mean, they're amazing.
Yeah, everyone on that show is just so good at glass blowing no matter what. So it was awesome to see that show and to see everyone do what they did, knowing that each and every one of them on that show was so good at glass blowing. And among other things that I've done this past week, I am working on designing a playable interactive video game for my website, adammeisner.com, and it's a handful, but it is happening. Working on some pixel art of myself right now. I've made a video game before that showcases this a little bit. However, this one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be just interactive right there on my site, and that is something I'm working on at the moment. And as that comes together, I'll keep you posted once that gets finished, and you'll be able to see it and play it right there, right on my website. So, working on that and working on designing the artwork at the moment and incorporating some other facets of all of that into the game as I design and script all of that. So, like I said, it's taken some time, but it will get there.
You're getting there.
It will get there. It'll get done. And that is what I have been up to. Other things that have been going on in the world, Laura?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing we can talk about is just everything that's kind of been announced at Comic-Con this last weekend.
I think that's probably the biggest thing to a lot of people is the San Diego Comic-Con.
Let me tell you, though, although Adam and I are currently working our way through the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm so sick of Marvel. And every time I tried to look up articles about like, oh, what's been announced at Comic-Con this year? Every single article only focused on Marvel. Like, I don't care about Marvel. Tell me about all the other things.
You know, if they're going to talk about Marvel, can I just read the articles about Blade and then leave it at that?
Exactly. Yeah. If you tell me about Marvel, I want to know about Blade.
I just want to know about Wesley Snipes. And
well, Wesley Snipes not in it.
What the?
Obviously, Adam, he's old now. He's not old, but I mean, he is. You know what I mean, though. Anyways, I do not care about Marvel at this point, so I didn't write down any Marvel announcements because F them.
No, I know who the new Blade is. It's not Wesley Snipes.
It's the guy from...
what's his name?
He's from True Detective.
Yeah. Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. We don't need to say names. We already know who we're talking about. His name is totally
escaping me right now. You can look it up while I talk about some of the other stuff. So, whatever his name is, I can't remember it. We know who he is. All right, let me tell you. I already talked about the new Lord of the Rings TV show that's coming out. There's also a new Game of Thrones prequel that is coming out, which I am not as excited about, but we'll see how that goes. They announced some stuff about that. What else did we get out of this weekend? We got lots of stuff on the new Dungeons and Dragons movie, which I think looks really cheesy and fun, and I'm quite excited to go see. The cast is good, and it looks just like, I think you showed me an article, Adam, where they were saying that the script seemed a lot like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which I think is a great movie. So if this Dungeons and Dragons movie is similar to that, I am all for it.
Hey, if Chris Pine makes Dungeons and Dragons seem like Monty Python, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that movie. And the other big thing I'm excited about is they are redoing Interview with a Vampire as like a TV series. And actually one of the main... So in the old movie, it's Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, right? And in the new TV series, one of those two, I don't know which character, is being played by Riley Ritchie, who is Grey Worm in Game of Thrones. I know he has a different name for acting, like Jacob Anderson or something like that. But I'm really excited to see him in Interview with a Vampire. I think that's going to be a really good series because it's a great book. I mean, Anne Rice is like the godmother of vampire literature. So I think it's going to be really, really good.
You know, I've never been more excited to see Chris Pine in movies as I've been recently with them announcing him being in Dungeons and Dragons and also with him being announced in the new Harry Styles film.
Oh, don't worry, darling. Yeah, that one looks really good. We're definitely going to have to review that one, I think.
But other than that as well, I am super stoked as they've announced the new Christopher Nolan film that was announced for July 21st of 2023, which is entitled Oppenheimer. And the cast list for Oppenheimer, for those of you who are not even aware that Oppenheimer is a movie,
it's
definitely look up the film Oppenheimer because, yes, the cast list for Oppenheimer is stacked. And I'll start listing some names here. It's not going to be all of them, but it's the main beginning of the stack list, which is Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., and Florence Pugh. are the beginning of that stack list, but the list goes on and on.
And like
on,
at the very
on.
end of the list is Gary Oldman.
Yeah,
So you know it's a good cast if Gary Oldman is like last.
It's finalized with Gary Oldman.
He's the last one after like 20 people.
Yeah.
You know it's a good cast.
So I'm very excited for that. And Oppenheimer comes out the same day as the new Barbie movie with Ryan Gosling.
It looks so fun. I mean, I grew up playing Barbies. Like, that's my childhood. So I definitely am going to check that movie out. We might have to do a double feature that day, Adam.
We might.
Maybe we'll start with Barbie and then we'll end with Oppenheimer.
Or do Oppenheimer and then do like a midnight showing of Barbie.
Oh, that would be fun. What if they did like something at Music Box and we could dress up as Barbie and Ken?
Oh, God.
That would be so fun. There's a lot of news that came out at Comic-Con other than that. I mean, there was talk about a possible King of the Hill reboot, which Adam you would be so happy about.
I'd be fine with that.
And we also got to see some stuff about the new Sandman series that's coming out. And I'm really excited about that. I'm a huge fan of Neil Gaiman. I haven't actually read Sandman. I've just kind of know about it. I definitely think that's something I'm going to want to check out and read some of before the series begins. So that's on my list of things to do as well.
Yeah, so those are all some of the main things that have been popping out from the San Diego Comic-Con and being announced recently. But as Laura was saying, there are a lot of things that are being announced right now. Brand new films that are coming out soon or are to be released in the near future. And we cannot wait to get our eyes on them as they come into our screens.
Yeah, and if there's anything coming up you're really excited about, little slurpers, let us know. We can review it.
Yeah, please do. We love.
We want to check them all out, especially the spooky movies because it's spooky season.
Ooh, ooh. And with that being said, that
long intro,
that brings us right into the film of the week this week. Speaking of spooky season, The Black Phone. That's right, The Black Phone was directed by Scott Derrickson, screenplay by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, based on The Black Phone by Joe Hill, son of Stephen King. Isn't that something? Produced by Jason Blum, Scott Derrickson, and C. Robert Cargill, starring Mason Thames, Madeline McGraw, Jeremy Davies, James Ranson, and Ethan Hawke. Right on the tail end there. We got to have Ethan Hawke. Cinematography by...
I mean, honestly, his screen time is not a lot. Like,
it's true. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but
I mean, I think it was done for a purpose.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Cinematography by Brett Jutkowicz. Music by Music by Mark Corvin. Distributed by Universal Pictures, and with a approximate budget of 16 to 18 million, it box officed with around 130.1 million right now. So it's not doing bad.
Yeah.
Doing pretty good. The movie came out right around June 24th, 2022.
But if you look it up, it's slated as a 2021 film.
Yeah, let me rephrase.
But you're right. Theatrical,
the theatrical release was June 24th, 2022, and as Laura was saying, there was a Cannes Film Festival or something.
What I saw was it was something called Fantastic Fest.
Oh, okay, Fantastic.
Maybe
Fest.
That's like a horror film festival or something.
So Fantastic Fest, it was released in
September of 2021.
Okay,
that's a long time, almost a year. Like, since it's Film Fest release until its theatrical release. That seems like a really long time.
I wonder if it was even final edit at Fantastic
Well, that's what
Fest.
I'm wondering. Did they, like, after that festival, make some edits or things like that or changes? I didn't see that when I was looking up stuff on the movie, but...
Yeah, it's very interesting that they would do a September of 2021 release at Fantastic
I'm sure
Fest.
like COVID had things to do with it. And,
right.
You know, isn't there also some... gossip about, because Derrickson, the director, was the director of Doctor Strange, and he was supposed to be the director of the new Doctor Strange movie that just came out, Multiverse of Madness or whatever, but he like stepped away from the project to do this. So I'm wondering if like the release of it had something to do with the release of the new Doctor Strange movie as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that came out not that long ago.
It's very interesting. So let's talk about The Black Phone and how this film really compares to, since I didn't mention this as I was just talking about the overview, but this movie is based on the Well,
You
I
mentioned
did
it a
mention that.
little, yeah.
Yeah, it's based on The Black Phone by Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King.
A short story.
A very short story.
About like 30 pages, I think.
Yeah.
Did you read the whole thing?
I did.
I thought it was good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting.
You can definitely tell he's the
pages.
son of Stephen King. Like,
Yeah.
he's heavily influenced by his father, which is not a bad thing. I mean, his father is one of the most prolific horror writers of, like, the century.
Like all time.
Yeah, I mean, like, who else can compare to Stephen King?
Right.
So it makes sense that his son would be so heavily influenced by him.
And to see how this movie compares to that short story, or the influence that this movie is picking up from that short story, I just want to kind of talk about what those comparisons really are, or what this movie is doing in comparison to that short story. So with this film, I guess let's talk about the introduction of this movie.
Well, should we give a brief like synopsis first?
Yeah, I think that's actually a great idea. So just a general plot of the entire film, just to pick it up off the ground. The plot of this film is Finney Shaw is a shy but clever 13-year-old boy who's being held in a soundproof basement by a sadistic, masked killer. When a disconnected phone on the wall starts to ring, he soon discovers that he can hear the voices of the murderer's previous victims, and they are dead set on making sure that what happened to them doesn't happen to Finney.
It's like serial killer meets a ghost story.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
That's what I see it as.
Yeah, and it's interesting because from the beginning of this film, it starts off with Finney. You see him as pitcher of this young kid baseball game,
Little
basically.
league.
A little league, yeah. And he's the pitcher, he's whipping the ball. And when I first started watching the movie, I was actually thinking, when I was first watching this, my first thought was, is this supposed to be a young Ethan Hawke? Because the kid kind of does look like Ethan Hawke a little bit.
Oh.
And I was overthinking it a little bit, but I didn't want to think that was overthinking it too much, because it very well could have been a young Ethan Hawke.
I kind of wish it would have been, right? I think what we'll talk about as we get into it is one of the big downfalls of this movie is that we don't have a lot of background on Ethan Hawke's character. The Grabber, as he's called. I think I would have liked if it started and we saw like a backstory of the Grabber, because we know nothing about the man.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe that would have been a better way to do it.
Yeah. So seeing this young kid, I'm thinking, is this supposed to be a young Ethan Hawke? Because, spoiler alert, it wasn't. But it's the main character of the story. It's Finney. It's Finney Shaw. He's pitching a baseball in this Little League game. And then we've got another character, this boy who's up to bat. And Bruce. And he is not hitting the ball. He strikes out once, he strikes out twice, and then on the third pitch, he actually hits a home run. And this is a big deal because he hits the home run, he runs the bases, and, all is good in the world for Bruce, but Finney feels like he just kind of failed the game a little bit. And they don't stick on that for too long, but obviously Finney is feeling like, I suck at baseball, basically.
He definitely has very low self-esteem. It doesn't help that he's constantly bullied by kids in his school.
Right.
So, that's kind of setting up Finney, that he's like, he's unsure of himself and he's not confident and constantly being picked on. Like his little sister has to constantly stand up for him.
Yeah. And I think that intro of seeing him really down on himself, that helps as the movie continues to show that his character is very low self-esteem character. Mm-hmm. So that's nice to see. I don't want to say it's nice to see that, but it's nice to see for the movie.
We get to see really good
his character development.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's good in that sense for the movie's character development in the plot and to see that. But Bruce does come up to Finney after the game and tries to have this conversation with him and to let him know, like, good game, man. Like, and I will also say, to compare this to the short story, this is also a reflection of the short story. That is part of the short story, that it's mentioned that they had a conversation with one another, that Bruce and Finney had a conversation with one another, and that was pretty much the only conversation they had, was when they talked to one another and said, good game, in this one baseball game that they had with one another.
Yeah.
So it's great, the sort of reflection that this film has off of this short story, how much it is pulling from the short story, and how well it pulls from the short story.
Are like word for word from the short story.
Yeah.
They added things because in the short story, Bruce is the only ghost, we'll say, that Finney actually talks to. And in the movie, I said that right. The short story, he only talks to Bruce. In the movie, there's like 6 of them, 5?
I think so.
There's a good number of kids that he talks to through the phone. So they took the short story and really held like to what it was and what it meant to be, and really just like expanded on it.
Yeah, just kind of built off of it.
I mean, there's other little things they changed, right? So in the short story, the grabber is a clown. And obviously that's very heavily influenced by It and Pennywise the Clown. And when they were working on the script for this movie, they gave the first iteration of the script to Joe Hill for him to review. And he was like, we cannot have the killer be a clown. Like It Chapter 2, it is recent, it's really popular now. People are going to think I'm literally like stealing from my father and trying to like go off of his coattails. He's like, we cannot have him be a clown. So instead, Joe Hill suggested that they change him to like this very vaudevillian kind of magician, which still in a way is a bit clownish.
I like that more anyway.
I mean, it's creepy. I mean, clowns are creepy too, because obviously in the short story, it's kind of alluding, or it's based off of John Wayne Gacy, who was a serial killer here in Chicago, who was a clown, and he would kidnap young boys and abuse them and murder them. And the grabber only takes young boys, and he was a clown. So there's a lot of influences on real serial killers in the short story. Like Ted Bundy would lure people into his van by pretending he had like a broken arm or leg and ask them for help, which is what the grabber does. He drops his groceries and like asks Finney to help him pick them up. John Wayne Gacy was a clown. This guy's a magician. And there's another one too I'm trying to think of right now. Oh, like Dahmer. Dahmer also preyed on young boys. And similar to what happens later in the story, like one of Dahmer's victims escaped, but was recaptured by Dahmer literally in front of the police. And Dahmer was just like, oh, he's fine. He's on drugs. And he took him back and killed him. And that's kind of what we like. There's lots of influences, not only from the story, or not only from Stephen King, but also from like real life.
Yeah,
absolutely. Sorry for that rant.
No, I mean, I think with the short story too, there were some things that I noticed in the short story version, that his sister had a different name in the short story than she did in the movie.
And she was older. She was an older sister in the story.
Yeah. That was another thing. His mother was mentioned in the short story, and she was still alive in the short story. So in the movie, his mother is actually not a part of the film, which is a very dramatic sort of alteration that was made in the movie, and I think definitely helped build upon the plot and helped develop his sister's character, because his sister was talking to their dad about how she would have these dreams that seemed very real, and she thought that they would help find the grabber, but the dad in their family was under the impression that these dreams were problematic and that she was not allowed to have these dreams because the dreams were the reason that their mother wasn't there anymore, and it was the reason that their mother committed suicide was because she was having these dreams. And so he put the blame on those kinds of dreams, and he was incredibly depressed because their mother had committed suicide. And so for their daughter to then be, for the dad's daughter to then be having these kinds of dreams, he just could not, he couldn't have that. So
I really liked that the movie expanded so much on the sister and his father, because in the short story, like the whole thing takes place from Finney's point of view in the basement. He has like a dream of his sister, right? Like having dreams and trying to find him, but that's his imagination. We're not actually seeing the sister doing that.
Right.
And I thought it was so good that the movie actually like went away from Finney and did focus on Gwen and her kind of seeing powers and the father and like the issues that he was having as well. I thought that was done really, really well.
There's also mention in the short story that Finney, when he squinted in the basement at the phone, it seemed to be breathing, which is also reflected in the movie. You constantly see, well, not constantly, but many times see the phone breathing. And again, I think it's great that the film is doing this, is showing that the phone is breathing, is expanding and collapsing and things like that. And it's just me saying, like, hats off to, you know, Scott Derrickson for being able to look at this short story and be able to just pull that into screenplay format and be like, I want this short story to be as much as I can in film format. And I want it to be as real as I can. And just taking a look at the film as a viewer when I was watching this, I was also thinking a lot about how badly I felt for Finney's character, because just thinking, man, this kid got abducted, he's in a basement, and now this poor child has to be in a basement, no food, no water, and the only things in this basement are a toilet and a mattress, and he's stuck here, and now he's got to figure out how the heck he's gonna get out of here.
Well, yeah, because I mean, at any instant the grabber could come and just kill him. You know, he knows what happened to the other boys. He knows the other boys were killed.
Right.
So he's trying to be like, how do I not become one of them?
And I'm also thinking, what if I was in that situation? Like, that would be horrific. And the only thing he can do to stay hydrated is drink the backseat toilet water, you know, like the back tank.
You got to do what you got to do, man.
I know. It's just so unfortunate to think of those circumstances, and then no one knows where he's at. And the only, you know, pep talk he's getting to get him through this, to try and figure out how he's going to get out, is hearing that broken wired line phone ring on the wall that doesn't work. And then when it does work, which technically it doesn't work, but he's hearing calls come through of the dead kids calling him, and they're giving him advice on how to get out.
So each of those kids kind of give him one piece of the puzzle about how to escape. So, you know, we have the one who tells him about like the hole in the floor and digging a hole out to the basement. The other kid calls and tells him about the cord that he can use to maybe like get the bars off the window and get out. Another kid tells him about the like freezer in the room next door, and if he busts through the wall, then he can break out through the freezer. You know, like he's getting all of these different ways that the other kids tried to escape, which I thought was so interesting too, because in the end, when we finally get there, he actually used like each of those things that the kids had told him. Each was used in the ultimate way that he was able to escape.
Yeah. In a different way, but very interestingly enough, he still got out in a different way of just combining them all.
All of them, yeah. So again, how we got here, right? We've got Finney and his sister Gwen. Their mother had some sort of like abilities where she had like prophetic dreams and could see things that weren't there, and committed suicide as a result of that. And so the father became like alcoholic and very abusive also to Finney and Gwen, to kind of, that was his way of dealing with it. And I think what's so interesting is that each of the kids, Finney and Gwen, each got a piece of their mom's power, right? So Gwen is able to have these like prophetic dreams. Like she sees Bruce being captured and tells the detectives figure out and come to her, and they're like, how do you know about the van and the black balloons? You know, and she's like, I saw it in a dream. And then on the other hand, Finney, it kind of sees things, right? Because he's able to talk to these ghosts. So it's like he had a piece of his mom's power as well. And Bruce, the kid from the beginning, is taken. And shortly after that, I feel like, is when Finney is captured. Yeah. And as we're talking about, while Finney's down there, like getting these calls from the ghosts and trying to figure out how to get out, the grabber is constantly just like showing up, and we haven't even talked about him yet, so maybe we'll pause and like talk about him for a second. But while he's down there, Gwenny is like trying to find her brother. You know, she's like having these dreams and she's praying to God to be like, give me these dreams. And I thought it was really funny in the one scene where she was like, what the fuck, Jesus?
Yeah.
Why aren't you helping me find my brother? So as I said earlier, I like that they expanded on that in the movie, and then we got to see Gwen. Like, that actress is so good. She played that role so well.
Yeah.
Just like a strong female character. I think horror films are one of the few genres where it's normal to have like a strong female character. I mean, you have like the final girl, right? That's like a trope in horror films. And I thought it was so great that we were able to see that again in this movie, but as like a young girl. Someone who is so young, but so sure of herself and so empowered. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
Should we talk about the grabber? Because we haven't talked about him like at all, and we really need to.
Yeah. Well, I thought the grabber, the character, the grabber, was so interesting. And the fact that he always wore a mask on his face, he always had his face covered.
Mm-hmm.
You never saw him not wearing a mask, that's for sure. And whether he was out in public or he was in the basement, he was always wearing a mask. And he always, when he went to go and see Finney in the basement, it was always this prep talk, this, you know, I don't want to say a motivational speech, but it was very much a mental sort of discussion.
A mental game.
Yeah.
Well, because he wanted, so, you know, a lot of killers have to justify their killing. And the grabber's way of justifying was for the boys to be a naughty boy, to play this naughty boy game, right? So if the boy misbehaves, then he has justification to kill him. And Finney wasn't playing the naughty boy game, like setting up the trap. So the grabber would like not close the door to the basement and sit at the top of the stairs waiting for the kid to try and come up and sneak out so that he could beat him with a belt. You know, like he was justifying his actions because the boy was misbehaving. And that was the biggest thing with the grabber, is like he's trying to play this mental game with Finney, but Finney is not like going with what he's not following the program that the grabber wants, you know? Mm-hmm. That's why he's not able to kill him, because he can't kill him if he doesn't have the justification for it, right?
Right.
I thought it was done so well.
Yeah. And it was interesting too, the questions that Finney would ask in the basement about the phone and about what was going on as he was being held captive in the basement, when the grabber would come down there to talk to him or something. Finney would ask the grabber about people upstairs and things like that. And the grabber wouldn't really give him a very honest or complete answer, but Finney would tell him, like, I'm going to scratch your face, and the people upstairs are going to wonder where those came from.
Yeah, he was playing his own mental game, too. Yeah. I did want to ask you, Adam, about the mask. So in the movie, the grabber is always wearing, like, a full mask or a partial mask, and the emotions kind of change throughout the movie depending on how the grabber is feeling, I guess. And which I thought was interesting, because in the story, there is no mask. It's just a man, a grotesquely fat man that he's described as, which Ethan Hawke is not.
He has a little bit of weight in this movie, but not to the point
grotesquely fat.
Not to the point of the short story. So.
And so I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the mask and like the changes in the mask, how you felt that kind of worked with the story.
I thought it was interesting near the end of the movie when the grabber came back and is talking to Finney, and this is actually a very interesting point, because he asks Finney to tell him his name, and Finney's response, if I remember correctly, I believe Finney actually tells him his actor name.
Really?
I think in the movie,
I don't remember what he said. I thought it was Tommy something.
Isn't it though? Because I'm pretty sure. I think that's what he says.
We'll have to look that up. I don't remember.
No, I'm pretty sure that's what he says. And then he's like, oh, is it? And then he shows him the newspaper, because he's like,
he
is
knows
it
it's
Finney?
Finney, yeah.
And he's like, I was thinking of letting you go. And then he has the sad mask on his face.
Yeah.
And he hasn't had the sad mask on his face for the entire film, I don't think. Mm-hmm. I think it's been the happy mask for the entire film, and that's the one time he's got the sad mask on his face for the film, is when he has the wrong name told to him.
Well, to go along with that, so I was reading a really interesting theory, I guess I'll say, about the masks, and that each version of the mask is like a different character. So, you know, like in Split, the movie with James McAvoy, where he has like a multiple disorder, associative disorder, whatever that's called, and he's has different personalities. And that's kind of what they were saying is the same thing happening here. So each time he changes the mask, it's essentially a different person, like a different character that he's playing. And that's why in the beginning, when Finney asked him, like, you're the one that killed those boys, right? And the grabber answers, no, that was someone else, meaning it was a different version of him, a different masked him, a different part of his personality. So each time we see him with a different version of the mask, it's kind of a different personality he has within him, because we see the one like with the full mask and no mouth, we see the one with just the top eyes, we see a frowny face one, we see a smiley one, and each one of those essentially is a different character. I thought that was super interesting, and it makes sense, as you're saying too, like with the moods. So he's really upset when Finney lies to him, and that's why we see like the frowny face,
right? And
also what I was trying to get to too is like Derrickson actually talked about the reasoning why he added a mask. And he was just saying that he liked the idea of like the grabber not being able to be himself without his face covered. And I think that's why at the end, remember, Finney like rips off his mask and he freaks out, and that's how Finney's like finally able to kill him, is because the mask is removed and he like panics and doesn't know what to do. So I thought that was really, really like, I don't know, the idea behind the whole point of the mask I thought was really good.
Yeah. And I as a viewer and as a listener, just loved hearing the audio for the characters that were coming through the phone line, and just the concept of the black phone being such a prominent piece of, just a prominent object in this film. The fact that we were so heavily reliant on the black phone itself throughout this movie, because I liked hearing the characters that were, the characters that were murdered and were coming through the black phone. I loved seeing them then in the room, but then although they were physically in the space, their audio was the sound like they were coming through the phone. So I enjoyed that being part of the film. I liked the concept of that and hearing that and seeing that. I enjoy things like that.
I definitely had some jump scares with the boys showing up in the basement.
You had jump scares to this whole film.
I'm easily scared. Funny story. I went to go see The Gift, which is not even really a scary movie. It's the one with like Jason Bateman and the guy from Great Gatsby. But there's like one scene where she's in the shower and the guy kind of like shows up and it's a little bit of a jump scare. Again, not a scary movie, but it was just a little bit of like and I like yelled in this theater and I was like, holy Jesus, mother of God. And like the people behind me started dying laughing because I shouted it out loud. And then I started doing this weird like donkey laugh because I was so embarrassed and I couldn't stop. I had to step out of the theater because I was dying and people behind me wouldn't stop laughing. It was like a whole thing. It was years ago. It was a long time ago. Ask my best friend. She'll tell you all about it.
Well, when we saw this, as soon as there was a moment where Ethan Hawke just randomly showed up in the basement and started talking to
it scared
Finney's
me.
Character, yeah, you freaked out. You're like,
came out of nowhere. I was gripping Adam's leg like the whole time. Anytime I could tell something was about to happen, like when the music gets tense or like the camera starts panning, I would start like squeezing Adam, and I was like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. But I love scary movies. Like, I love that feeling. It's just I embarrass myself when we're in public. That's why I like to watch them generally when I'm at home. So I don't
keep the cats close.
I don't
so
disrupt
you can squeeze
other
them.
people. Yeah. I did want to mention some of the fun little Easter eggs that I noticed in this movie. So I don't know if you noticed these, Adam, but Gwen, when she's out riding around trying to find her brother, is wearing a yellow raincoat, very reminiscent of the yellow raincoat in It.
Oh.
You know? And then also, so Derrickson is kind of known for doing a lot of horror films. He's also directed Sinister, another with Ethan Hawke,
Yeah.
which is probably one of the scariest movies I've ever seen in my life, honestly. He did like The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and supposedly he's doing an untitled Labyrinth project.
Hmm.
I don't know how I feel about that because David Bowie can never be recaptured. But anyway, so, but one of the things that
Just
Easter
get Harry
eggs,
Styles in there.
I mean, maybe he could do it, honestly. Something to think about. So, did you notice in the basement, Adam, of this movie, the like red line that was like horizontal along the wall of the basement? It reminded me so much of the movie poster for Sinister, where it's like a kid with the red line behind him.
Oh, that would make sense.
And, you know, it's also a Derrickson film.
Right.
So I thought there were nice little Easter eggs in here to kind of alluding to Stephen King and Derrickson's past works and things like that. I mean, and also the fact that he brought Ethan Hawke back again. But this was Ethan Hawke's first time playing like a baddie. And he didn't want to play a villain. He was afraid it would kind of ruin his like image. But Derrickson kind of was like, no, you got to do it.
You gotta do it.
You got to do it, man.
How does it ruin his image, though? I thought Ethan Hawke did a wonderful job.
Well, and so that's the reason why Derrickson casted him is because he knew he wanted this mask, right? And he's like, I need someone that can act through their voice and through like their eyes. And he was just saying the way that Hawke, and I agree with this, Hawke, he doesn't have a lot of screen time, but the screen time he has is like, whoa. The way he's able to move from like this like jolly, high-pitched kind of manic to, and then he switches and he's like, his voice becomes very like deep and husky and he's very like violent. The way he's able to do that while wearing a mask and still convey this like fear, I thought was like Ethan Hawke, I think is such a good actor.
Yeah.
He is perfect for this role.
Yeah. I'm an Ethan Hawke backer.
Yeah.
I'm all about that Hawk.
And the two kids, like they were also great.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't think they've done a lot before this. So Mason and Madeline, they were both really good. As I said, Madeline was like my strong girl, my final girl. I'm all for her.
Absolutely. Well, with all of that in mind with this movie, let's talk about what some other people are thinking right now about the Black Phone. With the Rotten Tomatoes current reviews at 83% from the critics and an 89% from the audience. Not bad.
No, pretty good.
Not bad from all the other people out there in the world.
For a horror film, I feel like that's good.
I'd say that's
they usually
good.
don't get very good reviews.
Yeah.
They maybe get good audience, but I feel like critics, they don't generally get as much love.
And I hate to term it like a horror movie like this, but I'm just saying it's like when you watch a movie like not to say It, but I'm thinking like Saw or something. Like that's kind of like
that's a different kind of horror movie for sure.
Yeah.
Even Roger Ebert gave this 4 stars.
Well, yeah, the writer for Roger Ebert, I will say.
Well, obviously, it's not Roger Ebert.
You know, Roger Ebert himself gives Sinister 3 stars.
That's not bad. Sinister's scary. Have you seen it, Adam?
No.
Maybe we'll watch it. It creeped me out. It's scary.
But yes, Roger Ebert himself gives the movie Sinister 3 stars, and the writer for Roger Ebert now gave 4 stars to this movie.
Yeah. I will say one of the critiques that I saw for this movie is that some people felt like there weren't actually any real stakes, as in Finney wasn't ever really in danger. Like most of the movie, Finney's on his own in the basement. The grabber's hardly there, you know? So they were like, was there really any stakes to this movie? Like, it's just a boy in a basement.
Well, the grabber is there though.
No, I know.
He's on the upper floor.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that. Like, I feel like obviously Finney was in danger the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, and even not even just from him, but like the ghosts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, people that have had critiques for this movie have said that it didn't seem like there were any real stakes.
Right. Perhaps if you want to think of it like that, then by all means think as you will. But when you watch the movie, you're introduced to the grabber being upstairs, and the stakes in that scenario when he leaves the door open is go upstairs if you want, but he's gonna beat the hell out of you
and
with
kill you.
with a belt and kill you.
Yeah. I think my big critique with this movie is that we weren't given enough. I am upset.
Well, I think we need to know more about the grabber.
That's what I'm getting to. We know absolutely nothing about the grabber. He has a brother who does coke and who's like a conspiracy theorist. And that's all we know. Like, it's kind of alluded to that the grabber must have spent time in this basement because he hears the phone ring too. No one else does, but he hears the phone ring. So it's kind of alluded that he had some kind of trauma in his past. Like, maybe he was kept in that basement. Maybe he was abused by his parents, you know, like, but we just don't know. We're not given any of that. And that's what I was looking for. I was looking for, like I said at the very beginning, backstory on him. Like, why is he now not that, you know, why is he a serial killer? Like, why is he attacking these boys? What happened in his life? Why does he have to wear a mask? You know, all of these things. I'm just like,
yeah,
give me some info on him.
Yeah. Yeah, what is the information on this serial killer?
Yeah.
Like, what has he become a magician serial killer for? Obviously, the magician
Something happened.
thing is all it's all a ruse because you got to hide yourself so that you can be the serial killer. But what is the inspiration to do that in this movie?
Yeah, and Derrickson and the other screenplay writer, I guess they do have a pitch for a sequel, and maybe that would be a prequel in the sense that maybe we would get a backstory on him. Like, I would like that, I guess. You know, I'm just like, why were Finney and him the only ones that hear the phone? Right. Why was he hearing the phone when he was a kid? Why was he in that basement? Just like, why can't he not have a mask? That didn't make sense, but you know what I mean?
Answers we might get in a sequel, if there's a sequel.
Maybe not.
Who knows? The Black Phone prequel? I don't know. Come on, Joe Hill, come on, help us out here. Scott Derrickson and Joe Hill, can we get another tag team on this one?
Give us the prequel.
Yeah, the Black Phone prequel. Ethan Hawke, come back and let us know. On that note, I think it's time for our slurps up or slurps down on this one. Slurps up meaning we recommend this movie, we think you should check it out, and we think that you should leave your ringer on. And slurps down meaning that we don't recommend this movie. We think it is a pile of garbage.
Silence it.
Yeah, keep the vibration on and leave the ringer off. Laura, slurps up or slurps down?
Slurps up for sure. Like I said, the only problem I had is that I don't have enough information, and maybe that's not a bad thing. So I think the acting in this movie was spectacular. Like, the child actors are so good. Ethan Hawke is so creepy. I was engaged and like riveted the whole time. It definitely gave me some spooks. I mean, I'm a big true crime fan, so I love I love serial killers, but I like learning about, you know.
We understand.
And so it was definitely up my alley, like exactly what I wanted in a horror film. I was very happy, and I will definitely go and see a sequel if one is made. So I highly suggest it. And even for people that aren't horror fans, like, it's not really a horror film. You know what I mean? There's no gore. There's ghosts. It's like a ghost story, kind of. That's all I'll say. So it's definitely, even if you're not a horror fan, I think you would still enjoy this movie for sure.
And I also give this movie a slurps up. I would say psychological jump scare. How about that one?
Yeah. Well, except the one time when the boy was like hanging upside down and he was like, scare the crap out of me.
Everything scares the crap out of you. And yes, I definitely think you should watch this movie. I think it's worth the watch for the acting. I think it's worth the watch for just the content, the plot, the character development, the look of the movie. Mm-hmm. I think it's all given to you on a fresh plate. And there's 2 words I can tell you that are reason enough to watch this movie. Ethan Hawke. That's it. That's all I need to tell you. It's worth it.
I wonder how many minutes of screen time he has, though.
It is pretty minimal.
Yeah.
But
what's there is good.
But what's there is good. Yeah, it's great. He's a wonderful antagonist in this film, and the content that he tells you as an antagonist, it's just, wow, what a crazy character he is as a serial killer in this movie.
I would like to see him as a voice actor in some like animated things. He has such a good voice.
It's great. It's wonderful, and I wholeheartedly agree with the reviews that think this movie is worth your time, because I think it's worth your time. I just think the psychology in this movie is just, it's great. It's just food for thought. So with that being said, That wraps it up for this episode of Screen Slurps. Be sure to follow us on social media at Screen Slurps on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And be sure to listen to us on Spotify, Ghana, or any other podcast streaming service out there. And if you enjoy what you hear, slide on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. It will help us a lot. And if there's any crazy movies that you want to hear about, let us know. Leave a comment on one of our social media pages, and trust me when I say we will be sure to talk about it. So, closing out, I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Laura Herlocker.
Slurps up, and we will catch you later.